What's up, guys? Before we get started, we want to let you know about our sponsor, Fresh Prince.
You guys need new uniforms for the upcoming sports season or want to have a matching shirt for the big family reunion? Maybe have a cool design that you also want on a shirt. Fresh Prince has got you covered for all your screen printing or embroidery needs.
Yeah, so go to freshprintzinc.com. That's fresh, P-R-I-N-T-Z, Inc.com, or check them out on Facebook to see what they have to offer. Again, that's Fresh Prince with a Z, Inc.com. Now, let's party.
Yo, I was in the shower. Call me back.
What's up, guys? I'm Josh.
I'm Jared.
And as always, the man behind the curtain, BJ. What's up, BJ?
What up, Beach?
So you can find us on Facebook. You can also find us on Instagram. Those are the only two that we're on right now.
Good.
I'm not a Twitter guy, so
Good.
we haven't started Twitter yet or Threads, any of that. Not a big social media person to begin with, but because of social media, we get to meet people like our guest today. But Jared, go ahead and tell the phone number and the email.
Hit us up on the hotline. You got us at 317-520-3168 or the email, themelonpartypod@gmail.com. Shoot us a call, shoot us an email, talk about topics, give us feedback, tell us we're dumb, tell us we're cool. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, so like I said, we got a guest today. A little bit different. This is actually someone we've never personally met. I'm a fan of him from his Instagram page.
Yeah, Josh sent it over to me. I checked it out. It's super interesting stuff right up my alley. I'm looking forward to this today.
The bio is what caught me when I first saw it. The bio says, a salvage television remarkably tunes into nostalgic broadcasts from adjacent realities.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful, and I like it. It's pretty great. So
I like it.
Today we have from Deja Vu TV from Instagram, we have Joe. Welcome to the show, Joe.
What's up, bud?
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. We really appreciate being here. Like I was saying before, I really like your stuff. I've really noticed a lot of this AI art and stuff coming out. You and Davy Jones are two guys that I really enjoy.
Sure.
But it's one of those things where a lot of times with you guys artists, you kind of keep a lot of your other part of your life away from your page or this and that. So like I'm seeing all this cool art, but I have no idea about the person behind it. So that's one reason.
Tell us a little bit about
I wanted
yourself.
to reach out to you and find out more about you. So let's start out. Just kind of tell us where you grew up and whatever you feel comfortable with about your childhood, and kind of lead into what your inspirations and stuff are.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in Scarborough, Ontario, which is like a suburb just outside of Toronto. Now it's all part of what they call the mega city of Toronto, but growing up, there's some other, famous Canadians like Mike Myers from Wayne's World, Jim Carrey,
Sure.
The Weeknd.
Nice.
A lot of those guys are from Scarborough. Farmer, like the snow rapper. I
Oh,
used
yeah.
to in one of my.
For sure, for sure.
His little brother actually stole my bike when I was a kid, but I got it back.
Oh, really?
What?
Nice.
No way.
Funny
Awesome.
story.
I love it, dude.
But yeah, growing up in Scarborough, I was always interested in art and sports. In high school, I took art, but it wasn't anything that my friends were doing. We were playing rugby and hockey in Toronto. When I got to university, that's when I kind of had to make a decision. And I started studying art. I double majored in art history and studio. And then from there, I worked for the city of Toronto, and I developed art programs like camps for kids,
Oh, wow.
outreach
Nice.
programs, getting kids interested in school through art, right? Because we know that school's not for everybody.
That's
Yeah.
great, though.
That manifested itself into a career. So I went to teachers college, and I became an art teacher at a private school for 10 years.
Great.
And then I had an opportunity to move up in administration. So currently I'm a vice principal at a private school in Toronto, and I
Awesome.
oversee technology, but how to integrate it meaningfully.
Okay.
So everything that I've been doing with the Instagram page is almost like a byproduct of what I've been doing with school,
Awesome.
like work that is.
I bet that's very helpful for the younger generation to kind of relate to what you're doing too, instead of like handing them a book, and saying turn to chapter 3 for this lesson. You can say, hey, check out this Instagram page, and that's a lot more accessible for kids at a younger age, I would think.
Absolutely. And these days, I think it's easy for a teacher to kind of model themselves after their favorite teacher. But then again, you're referencing a 20-year-old model, right? Kids
Right.
will see through that jazz, and they
Mhm.
want something that's new, and they have technology at their fingertips. They're inundated with it.
Sure.
So why aren't we using tools in the classroom, right? It's easy to preach at the front of the room, but that was never my style. So
Sure.
as an art teacher, as we were drawing things, I'm like, hey, let's scan it in and let's try to color it using Photoshop. I don't know how to use
nice.
Photoshop. Well, you're going to have to learn it eventually. We might as well
Right.
learn. And we've been very fortunate working at a private school where we're one-to-one. So all the kids have MacBooks. We supply them. So they had
Oh,
all
wow.
these tools at their fingertips, but made my job a little bit easier because it was fun. So I wasn't really,
Sure.
you know, teaching from a textbook. I was almost teaching from the hip, and I was relating things that I was doing in the real world and having them create.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great because we get caught up sometimes in what the future holds, and we get afraid of it because we're afraid of things we don't quite understand or things that we fear. And so, I mean, technology is moving forward, and like you're saying, all of this stuff is going to be integrated in their lives. We might as well teach it. And instead of saying
Normalize
it's
it.
not going to happen, I don't want to teach it. We got to stick with these old. It's like, no, this is where we're going. Why not teach it? You know, and it's the same thing as being a parent. You know, you can be afraid of stuff for your kids, but instead of keeping them from experiencing it or whatever, just teach them about it and give them the warnings and give them, okay, if this does happen or if you are going through this, this
Remove the
is how you
stigma.
handle it, you know,
Yeah.
and instead of just being afraid of it. And I think with technology, there's a lot of fear, and especially with AI, there's a lot of fear. So
Well, at least now in the press. I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on all of the fear mongering behind AI right now going on?
Well, it's kind of history repeating itself, right? So, you know, obviously anything in this world can be polarizing, and you know, anything new, if you don't understand it, you're going to be scared.
Sure.
But the same thing happened with like digital cameras. I was working at Staples when I was in university, and people were like, "Oh, digital cameras, there's no soul in photography. It takes a picture." Right now, everyone takes a picture from their phone. So I don't
You're
know what everyone was
absolutely right.
complaining about.
Sure.
right.
Or even researching, you know, oh, you're going to Google, that's cheating. Well, no, did you want to waste 5 hours at a library to find something that you didn't want?
Right.
So
Right.
now if you can harness like AI, like let's use ChatGPT or the language models for a second. Why wouldn't you delegate a task to something that could
Yeah.
find exactly what you want? Like, we're not here to waste our time. You know, time is
Sure.
money.
Sure.
But I think everyone is just kind of putting up their arms because they're afraid that maybe their jobs
Yeah.
will be replaced. Well,
Yeah.
if your job can be replaced by a bot, then
Yeah,
how do
maybe-
you
Yeah.
beat the bot, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they're only trained on what you tell them, right? So how can
Sure.
you kind of find a new avenue or incorporate it into what you're doing?
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and with the AI too, I think it hasn't really been explained. You know, I think that's too where a lot of people are just like hear it.
They
they're
have science fiction definitions in
Yeah.
their mind. They're thinking about, you know, Skynet and Terminator
Oh,
and
yeah.
like the AI movie, the Kubrick
it's
movie
the same
or
with
something.
like aliens. Anytime people hear aliens, they automatically hear invasion. They think invasion. It's like, no, mate, that's just what we think. You know, that's what we've come up
Right.
with. We don't know the reality of anything. You know, so yeah, that I think that's, and like we were talking the other day, there's a lot of people who kind of dog on the AI, and they're like, "That's not real art," you know.
Right,
And I'm like,
yeah.
and I'm sure when they went from finger painting to paintbrush, they're like, "That's not that's not real art."
That's not art.
So
yeah.
like it's and for me, art is something that is always pushing boundaries, and it's always trying to find that new way of moving forward, whether it's art and comedy or actual drawing art,
something
or
that
movie
elicits
art.
an emotional response from you is art, really.
Yeah.
You know, it could be a video game, it can be a movie, it could be a painting, a sculpture,
and it's
you know,
always
a
been pushed
song.
forward with technology. You know, so now we're hitting that final.
Yeah.
That technology of AI.
Do you get a lot of criticism, or have you received any of that from more quote unquote traditional artists saying that, you know, using AI to create art, that's not real art, or anything like that? What's your kind of experience with anything like that?
Yeah, of course. And it's been the majority has been positive. So I've been meeting some very cool people,
Yeah.
like yourselves, obviously. But then you get a few of the negative comments, and
Sure.
it really doesn't affect me, right? You know, like I have the background in art history, so I'm probably sure I'm well versed in art more than anybody that's visiting
Right.
my page. So
Right.
it's like you eloquently said, it's how it moves you, right? And it can just be as simple as that. You could hate it, you could like it,
Right.
as long as you looked at it, I think it's done its purpose, right?
Right.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be traditional, like 2-dimensional on a wall. It could be on your phone. It could be someone dancing, right?
Yeah.
If that kind of stirred your heart a little bit, then it's done its job. But
Sure.
hate's a strong word, but when people comment, and let's say I investigate, I click on their account because they say that
Yeah, of
AI
course.
is soulless and all that kind of jazz, to see what they're kind of pumping out they're on their own. I'm like, maybe you could use some AI,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Like,
Sure.
it's like I treat it like my process. I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit later. Is I'm always sketching, right? So as a lifelong artist, I've always been doodling, but now with this tool, I'm able to kind of drop some of my drawings in there, and it really creates a skeletal system so I can get a little bit more accuracy. And I'm just asking it to kind of fill in the blanks. So if anything, I think I'm not just putting in words
Yeah.
and getting out a response, because you can see AI art that looks like that. It looks flat, and
Sure.
you can see a million pictures of Iron Man that look like Robert Downey Jr. That's cool. But,
Right.
AI has this insane ability to mutate and to meld things in
Right.
ability that you wouldn't have been able to do right now with like Photoshop and all these other tools. I'm pretty competent in those too. And
Yeah.
you're just not able to do that yet, or to have a surprise. Like I made a post. It's my most popular one. It's Shrek and the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
But that was just me messing around with a Shrek idea, and I'm like, he kind of looks like a turtle. But it was my mind that made that connection. It wasn't AI. So
Sure.
anything to kind of coax the creative muse, I think, should be endorsed and not kind of spit on.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically your assistant in a sense. It's
Right.
like,
Absolutely.
here's my idea. Help me make this idea happen.
Something to bounce you off. It's another tool in your toolbox. And like, that's really interesting what you were talking about. And that was like kind of leading into one of my questions exactly. I don't know really a lot about these programs. I mean, you hear the name ChatGPT. I did a cursory Google search, when I knew we were going to interview, to just kind of check it out. And I saw a lot of, free AI generators. And I was kind of thinking back to the infancy of those when they first started. And I remember seeing those GIFs that were just like Lovecraftian horror meldings where like eyes would pop out of their mouths and heads and stuff. And I'm like, they've come so far so quickly. And I'm just curious, like, what kind of tools is there one specific software that you use? Do you use multiples to kind of, get that? Like maybe explain a little bit more about that. I'm a little more interested to hear more about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as part of my job, I always have to be forecasting technology, and I have to kind of, be ahead of my staff, obviously. So when I heard about generative models, right? Like let's talk about ChatGPT. I was very interested in it because I was already exploring machine learning and how you could just set something to do an infinite amount of processes while you're sleeping, and then you
Right.
come back and all of a sudden it's figured something out.
Sure.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
So when I was able to see kind of those early incarnations of images, it had me hooked. And I
Right.
remember telling my wife, I'm like, there's something cool about this. I need to learn about it.
Yeah.
So I exclusively use Midjourney, which
Okay.
is an AI that it's kind of embedded within Discord. So you kind of talk to it and it kind of spits out the images.
Okay.
Other programs have come a long way. DALL-E is, I know, is a popular one, but I can almost tell when something was made with that one.
Yeah,
It's
you can
very
tell
precise
some
and
subtle differences between the softwares usually.
absolutely. I try in my process. I never doctor any of my images after. I don't bring them into Photoshop to process anything. I kind of embrace the chaotic
Sure.
sense of it, and I think
Sure.
kind of it's been successful with what I've been doing so far.
Yeah.
But to give a bit of an education on what my stance on how those models are created, like I work in a school. If I was teaching a class of kids to do something, those kids can teach more kids that and more kids that. So it's infinitely learning all these different models that it's creating, and then collectively it betters itself. So in the progression of Midjourney, for example, there's different versions. Like there's projects I could never completed. So recently I
Right.
could finally do Darkwing Duck when
Nice.
previously it couldn't create that because the models maybe weren't established, or
Okay.
it looked a little bit too much like Donald Duck, or
Right.
so I guess as more people contribute, it's creating more opportunity for better art,
I see.
or worse. It all depends.
You say it's embedded in a Discord, so it's kind of user generating and crowdsourcing this data from multiple users then who are inputting into this software. Is that kind of how it works?
I would think so, yeah, because ChatGPT, they're very transparent about it, where your chat history can be used
That's
to
so
better the system.
strange.
It's not like, the government isn't kind of learning from everything we're doing on Google anyways.
Right.
But the more that those images are generated, it's learning itself, right? So it's almost kind of parsing itself
Wow.
into smaller little things, and
Right.
it's creating an archive, I presume. So
That
it's
is-
always referencing those. And
that is so
even some
meta to
images,
wrap
like
your
if you
head
try
around.
to tackle something, you can tell it's leaning towards something. Like if I did a Mickey Mouse Michael Jackson mashup,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
Right.
I had to really kind of coax it away from Mickey Mouse. Like it almost makes it look like a mascot at the park, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not making it like a 2-dimensional Steamboat Willie. So there's some things that it's kind of rigid on, at least I
Right.
think for now,
Sure.
right? Until more people,
Because
kind
it
of
has
get around.
limited data or whatever on that specific thing or person or
Well,
whatever.
there was a few of the Mickeys that were pretty creepy looking,
Yeah.
too, where the eyes are bugging out, and you're just like, man, that's wild.
I
And
was
that's
really-
why with
yeah.
like Davy Jones has like the crazy circus and amusement park, to where everything's
Sure.
kind of chaotic and horror kind of thing. And that's why I like both of you guys. You're using the same stuff, but it's like these two different visions and these
yeah,
two
very
different products,
different
and
outcomes
that's
for
what's
sure.
really
The
cool.
contrast is great. Yeah. When I was doing my Google search and just kind of searching this interview, the one thing that I noticed is when I Googled your Deja Vu TV, that in Canada there's a TV channel called Deja Vu that shows old 70s through early 2000s sitcoms, they said.
awesome. It's like
And
a
then I
Pluto
was like
TV.
relating that to your content, and I was like, surely that's where he's drawing a lot of his inspiration from. Maybe is that like an awesome channel for you growing up or something?
Yeah, so growing up in Canada, that was one of those channels you had to pay extra for. So we didn't have I didn't have access to that at my
Okay.
house. But I was aware of it. But it was more the reason why I came up with the name was just kind of my first introduction to those images, and they almost look like they were from a Viewmaster.
Right.
And that's kind of the angle I've tried to kind of toe for the last, I guess it's been over a year now.
Nice.
So my prompts have changed, like in how I can kind of coax images depending on the new versions that are coming out. But fundamentally, like I won't post something unless it kind of has that feel.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do too. I also like you don't just do with your posts. It's not just about the image. You do really well with the music. You matched all the music up really well with the images and stuff too.
Oh, thanks.
So it's like this whole total
Package,
package
yeah,
of
an
this,
experience.
Yeah, of this inspiration. So early on, you were saying you always doodled and things like that. So early on, who was like inspirations to you, like artist wise, who you were looking up to that kind of got you into the art thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think initially it was always like comic book artists, and I wanted to be an Imagineer for Disney.
Sure.
And I was just drawing constantly. And, as a kid, if you're one of the good drawers in class, and you're kind of like a cool kid too, right?
Yeah.
'Cause can you draw me this? Can you draw me that?
Yes,
So it was just
commissions.
practicing. And Christmas, I was always asking for cartoon books like Christopher Hart. And it was just, the fundamentals of just building things. And as I got older, I started, looking at some more traditional artists. So if you look at my page, I have a liking to Vincent van Gogh. I think, as an artist, he's a bit of a tragic figure, but innovative and revolutionary. And, he only became popular after he died. And that's so sad. So
Yeah.
if you can see, I try to toe like a somber line when I try to tell these stories. And I have a goal of creating animated episodes, which behind the scenes are coming out very soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an angle. Rene Magritte, was a surrealist who really kind of was pivotal in that field, where he was taking absurd images and putting them together. I think that's definitely my cup of tea
For sure.
and what I'm doing right now. But it was nothing very abstract, but almost photorealistic. But when you juxtapose images together, you create this really weird sense of dream. And I think that's it's getting some attention, right? And obviously pulling into nostalgia. Everybody has that collective memory of the past, and almost kind of like an ache in your heart because things aren't like that anymore.
Right,
So
yeah.
I think maybe that kind of directs things over to my
Sure,
page too, when
sure.
things were a little bit more simple and innocent, and it was just Saturday morning cartoons, or Jean-Claude Van Damme was spin kicking something.
Right.
Like, that's all you had to think
Or
about.
some splits.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it feels like nostalgia's, especially since the post-COVID, when everybody was kind of really stuck in their houses for a year, or whatever, all the kind of collectibles and the nostalgia things went into overload. It
Yeah.
felt like everybody was really kind of dragging back, and you saw all these new kind of things pop up. Everybody was making bread during COVID,
Yeah.
and then like you
You're
see a
right.
lot of new, like different different, people locked in their houses making different arts and things like that, songs and songwritings. And I've really kind of noticed that it's kind of drawing back a little bit now that we're kind of coming out post-COVID a little bit. But I've noticed now that everybody seems to have, maybe that ache of nostalgia, like you said, a little more. Everybody seems to have that, and I find that interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of Van Gogh, I always enjoyed art because it was something I couldn't do. I just wasn't good at drawing.
I'm terrible, dude.
I had visions. I was better at writing than I was, so writing was kind of my outlook or my out of things. Being an only child, and I had to write, but so in college, I took appreciation of art because I always enjoyed it. I was like, that'll be, I want to take a course that's kind of going to be fun. And then in that course, I really started to appreciate Van Gogh when I was explained Van Gogh, Jackson Pollock. And when you look at Jackson Pollock's later work, you're just like, man, what is this? But then when you go and look back at where it came from, and you're talking about troubled mind. And so when I had the opportunity to go to Amsterdam, when I owned my brewery, we brewed beer out there in Berlin. And so when we were in Amsterdam, I was like, I have to go see the Van Gogh Museum. And it's so well done because it starts from the very beginning. And a lot of people don't realize with Van Gogh, he was painting people and these scenes of people at a park and things like that, and was laughed at constantly. And these artworks are beautiful artwork. There's nothing that today it's nothing that sticks out in today's world or anything like that, but it's these beautiful color coordinations that are all in the same tones. And then when you start going through the museum and you're going to where now you have the flowers and you have
stacks of weed,
and like all these different ones, and then he's going through things, inanimate objects, and then you get into all of his other later stuff that we know. And and so seeing him kind of, when you were talking about people being negative towards some of the comments and stuff like that, it was the same with him. And then there was stories you read about where he tried to pay, because he was a bad alcoholic, he tried to pay bars with his paintings and for a bottle of wine. And you come to think, it's like, I wonder which paintings, like, are these the $3 to $5 million paintings now? Like this person could have had, and it's same with like Pollock. Pollock went from this very dark, like demented, like obviously really troubled artwork of the guy in the electric chair and things like that, and then it moved into it's this chaos where he just was throwing stuff at a canvas, and then and if you don't understand who the artist is, a lot of this stuff you just look at it and you're like, that doesn't make any sense, but then when you start to study the artists themselves, and you start to get more of an understanding on, okay, this was all done during drunk rage, and this is his anger, and this is everything that's in his
starving,
mind.
Tortured artist has been a trope for a long time.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely, they say you can't a lot of people say you can't create art or experience art unless you're like a troubled soul, or you've had, like terrible, sadness or loss or something in your life, or is what spurs the great artists. And I don't necessarily think that's true, but it certainly does seem to hold true for a lot of them.
It helps, because art is that escape.
It's the passion, yeah,
it's that escape, sure. And it's a way to express what you're dealing with, and a lot of people don't necessarily want to go to a therapist, so they throw everything on a canvas, or they write stuff down. They create stories and movies and things like that, So that's a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah.
So
I was curious about what kind of. I'm a big guy about. I'm sure you are as well, being an art guy, about censorship. I mean, certainly I don't want to censor anybody. I think no censorship is a good thing, obviously up to a point. But I wonder what you think about the proliferation of like AI using like these deep fakes. Obviously, we had like the Taylor Swift nudes like dropped or something on Twitter for deep fakes, and I guess like a Biden deep fake went out to a bunch of voters of him saying like totally crazy stuff. And I'm wondering what kind of safeguards do you think should be put in place for these technologies without crossing that line into like censorship, obviously.
Wow, man, that's a tough one to answer because there's a lot of money to be made, right?
Right,
so I know
exactly.
A lot of celebrities. Well, first, I remember being a kid, and I think we're probably close in the same age. I remember, when there was like a Fred Astaire commercial for like a broom or something, and they had contacted his family, and they said, we want to use his likeness. I don't know how they did it back in early 2000s, but they did it, and that's pretty much what they're doing now. James Earl Jones has sold his voice to
Yeah,
Disney,
that's
right? So he can be
right.
Darth Vader forever. Bruce
Mhm.
Willis, you know,
Mhm.
obviously he's
With his aphasia.
he's not
Yeah.
able to act the same way, right? So he
Uh-huh.
has sold his likeness, and I think in a particular era, like his Die Hard, fifth sense. No, it's not
Uh-huh.
Sixth Sense.
Sixth
Sense,
Sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fifth Element.
Yeah.
He's in both
Fifth Element.
Element.
Yeah. You got it.
in that
Uh-huh.
era. So I think in that regard, artists, celebrities, they might have an opportunity to really make a lot of money, you know, posthumously, you know, to make it. But then again,
Sure.
I really don't see the value in having celebrities in art anymore, right? And although, you know, Tom Cruise is, you know, always going to be Mission Impossible, we know that James Bond can be pretty much anyone. And
Right.
with AI, why does it have to be someone you recognize? Sometimes I feel like if I see Tom Hanks in a movie, it's Tom Hanks, right? And it
Right,
kind of
yeah.
takes you out of it. In terms of like scraping your voice, you know, you have to be super careful. I deal with a lot of security, obviously working with minors at a school. So even the other day I talk about staff. I'm like, be careful with cold calls, right? If they're asking you what your name is and to say yes, they could be using AI to scrape your voice. And
Yeah, wow,
we
I
know
didn't
that
even think
telecom
about
companies in
that.
Canada really don't care about dual authentication, you know. So there's all those things you need to worry about just in terms of AI and security. But in terms of art and censorship, art's never really been censored, right? And the fact that you can be avant-garde or you can kind of disturb some things, you know, karma will decide what happens to your art,
Sure,
right? Whether
sure.
or not people like it. But then again, you know, there's artists like Andy Warhol that all he did was use copyright images, right?
Right.
And he didn't even do it himself, right? He delegated it to other artists, and
That's an
he
interesting
is a legend.
perspective. Yeah.
So I think it all depends on what side of the fence you're sitting. You know, Taylor Swift, I know, has been in the news when you use it in a dastardly way. There
Right.
needs to be consequences to that, because who knows what people could do with your image.
Yeah. That's the
and
most
use it
terrifying thing
to
to
destroy
me.
your identity. That can be very damaging, especially when you work so hard to create something. But there's always going to be a dark side to everything that we do in terms of technology. And what we're seeing right now at the consumer level, I'm sure there are powers that be have far more advanced things. And I
Right.
think in the future we're going to be able to see.
That's what I'm thinking.
you
Yeah.
know,
If the government,
movies
if we're
being
getting
made,
this, if we're getting this product at the consumer level, then what kind of tools does the government already have and has had for years at their disposal?
Yeah.
You know, like who knows? I wonder
you just
also.
gotta-
I was just thinking as you were talking about that, and since you're an educator and with AI, I know you're very pro AI, but I imagine it's got to be pretty frustrating. I know for a lot of educators that I've spoke with about the cheating element of like Chat GPT and whatever, and trying to safeguard against that. And I found a lot of college people talking about it as well, saying that like every professor now is taking their papers and feeding them into these AI generators to see if they're AI or not, like basing their grades upon this. And I wonder what your thoughts are on kind of that proliferation currently.
I think if you are if you're taking it from that stance where you have to feed through something through a generator, I think as an educator you need to reassess what you're doing in the classroom. So with our staff, you know, I said that the kids are using it before you are, right? I've been forecasting this for the last few years.
Right.
But if you're not involved, let's like, you know, Josh, you said that you're a writer. If your teacher is not involved in the writing process, then why are you looking at the final product and then judging it there, right? You weren't along the path when the kid was doing the rough copy. You weren't giving feedback and having them adjust it and talking about why they're writing something. And then you're going to be the judge and jury whether or not they used a bot to do it, right? Like I've read my share of AI created content as a vice principal. I can tell that it's not made by a human, and it's just not as good, right? It's
Generic.
accurate and grammar is concise, but there isn't kind of that flow. Like there's kind of like a very sweet candor to someone's writing where it has their own style, and you can kind of pick up on it. But then again, I think the teacher needs to be more involved in the process throughout, or embrace it, right? Have, you know, in our social studies program, I've created little algorithms that will conjure someone from history. So the kids are asking that entity questions, and then they'll go in and fact check it after, right? Instead of doing the other way. So I think, you know, learning
that's
can be
interesting.
new and exciting for everybody involved in the classroom, but I'm not going to waste my time, you know, running something through a fact checker, and then you have to convince a parent that their kid didn't write it too. It's just, there's no point.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So you kind of do like an algebraic social studies kind of formula. Basically, it'll be like, I flew a kite in with a key attached to it, and they're like, and I was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, but I wasn't a president. And they go and fact check that, and like, oh, that's Ben Franklin that's talking to me, but you don't tell them it's Ben Franklin. That's like a learning process of yours. That's really
I haven't done it that way, but that's really cool. Like a mystery guest. That's cool.
That's what I thought it was.
It's like a Jeopardy question.
That's what I would eat that up if I was in school. I'd be like, who am I talking to here?
I did a little bit lower hanging fruit. So in Canada, we're in our grade 6-7 program, we're learning about the War of 1812. So, we can conjure someone from history like Laura Secord, who was, at least from our history books, saying that she was like a spy. So we could ask her, what her thought process was, or we've been working, my friend and I, we've been creating a JFK one. So we even have it capping his memory after he died. So he had mentioned something about when his brother was assassinated. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. You weren't around for that.
Yeah.
Oh, right, you're correct.
Wow.
So it's interesting to kind of play around with these two cool tools, because the kids are going home and they're probably talking about what they did.
Sure.
Instead of, what'd you do today? Like, I don't know.
I talked to JFK today, that would blow my mind if I was a parent and came in. You did what today? You talked to JFK?
Yeah.
What?
Well, that's what drives me nuts. My kids just ask them, well, what'd you do today? And so then I start asking, did anybody do anything funny? Like anything crazy happen? Like trying to, but it's like, you gotta understand their brains are moving so fast, and there's so much they're taking in on a daily basis with like
100%.
the drama at school with their friend, or this person's upset over and then you get home and it's just like, then it's like, it's a whole, and it's this whole set of new stuff to put in your brain. It's, I'm gonna go play with the neighbors, so it's like, and then at the end of the day, it's like, well, how was your day today? It's like, what'd you do today? I don't know. And then it's like they're that's an honest answer though. They really don't know, because there's been so much going on. So like what was it, in the early 2000s, I think we started seeing the holograms. So like on concerts,
like
they had Tupac,
Coachella or whatever,
and John Wayne. And so then we were like, oh, this is bad. And then like all of a sudden, boom, it's AI. So it's almost a move from this holographic thing to now this AI. So where do you think the next step? Do you have any idea of where you think
what the
AI
next evolution will be?
Because I mean, that moved really fast, and I think where AI is now, there'll be a slower movement. But where do you think is the next movement, for positive or negative?
I'm going to try to let's go like Star Trek, and I'm going to do a positive spin on it, opposed to
I'd rather
Star Wars maybe. So we're right on the footsteps of quantum computing. So with quantum computing, you're able to make calculations that will far exceed anything that we're able to do. So where I see that going is the automatic generation of content. So right now, AI is catching up with video a little bit. Like you can see, I've played around with a little bit, but it kind of takes away where it ruins the magic when something's kind of glitch a little bit.
Right.
Quantum computing is going to make that seamless. So you're going to be able to ask to see a John Wayne Western underwater, with these people in it, and it's going to be able to spit that out for you. So I think that's that the next version of Netflix or whatever streaming services we're going to be, is like a personalized holodeck. And I think, with quantum computing, it's going to be able to do it. So that's why I think it's kind of arbitrary that Hollywood is trying to license these images. I think it might be their last stand, but I don't think there's going to be room. And it is sad because, I went to school for art, and I'm trained in video editing and all that stuff. I can see that that's going to be obsolete as soon as I can start generating graphics and images and special effects, because it's going to do it. Like in Midjourney, I can make anything that I want. I only post stuff for what fits within the framework of DejaVu.tv. But stuff I'm doing at school, like my kids at my school, we're not even looking at Google Images anymore. They're making their own. Like if they need a picture of a forest, they're using Adobe Firefly, which is a little bit watered down, but they're making their own images. So the fact that these kids are conjuring things from the ether and using them, I think they're going to be prepared for the future.
I did not even think about that. That's an incredibly, mind-blowing take to me, to think about this huge, like contract negotiation for like the Hollywood actors that they just went through, where they were talking about the AI likeness rights were a big sticking point during that. And to hear you say that this next evolution is just going to be AI generated content of whatever you want from anyone, that is going to make Hollywood and writers obsolete, basically. You know, if like you can have someone coming up with an original idea and putting it in this program and spitting out something at a high quality using this quantum computing, then, you know, why do you need a $200 million movie budget and writers and cameras or anything, you know, when you can just do this instead?
Well, that's one thing I heard. I think Matt Damon was talking about the reason movies today aren't as great. It's because it's taken. So to have a movie made, it's taking him $50 million out of his pocket to do marketing and all this, and then he's got to split the earnings. So if he makes $100 million, he's got to split half of it with everybody else. So now to just for him to come out even, he has to hit $100 million,
Right.
and then so $150 million for him to turn profit. Now, is your story some love affair story that's just a nice story? This isn't a blockbuster movie or anything. Like, that's a huge gamble.
Right.
So maybe with the AI, I think writers, actors, all that will find producers. All of them are going to find a way to make their money and their career as it goes on. There's just going to be
Sure.
there's things we can't think of right now that they'll create to where they can have their hands in this thing.
I think you're
Because
right.
I mean, basically, this AI is. I mean, when they went to do Alien, they said it's Jaws in space. So basically, you just say that to AI, and AI would create Alien.
Yeah.
You know, so it's basically just now the person can sit at home and give the AI a pitch.
It's
like,
still
and then
in
the
its
AI would create
infancy.
it. So yeah,
And like you said, I mean, we're still the humans, and there's still an artificial edge to these programs in their infancy. They're not completely evolved to a point where they're spitting out content where you can't immediately discern it from human created content. We're not at that tipping point yet.
No.
So I think, you know, Hollywood's obviously going to be around for a while. Actors and voice actors and directors like Christopher Nolan, who have singular visions of what they want to do, are always going to be around and get paid and have a market. But to hear you speak about quantum computing, and just to have me, who I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, you know, so to be able to like hear you say that, is my mind's going a million miles a minute to like download one of these programs now and be like,
Just create your journey.
vampire fighting Leviathan in a dungeon, and I want to see what kind of ideas it's going to give me, you know, like I had not even thought of that as a tool, and now like I absolutely want to investigate that. That sounds so amazing.
yeah.
Well, if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you can have ChatGPT construct a very elaborate scenario and game for you,
love it.
in a second.
I love that.
And it can update as you're playing. You can feed what's happening, and it's quite remarkable.
Wow.
And in regards to Hollywood, I think what's really kind of cool about crowdsourcing, you know, we've seen that in the last few years where people are supporting things that they like.
Right.
You know, why can't there be more of a grassroots attempt? And if Hollywood does see, well, people want to see this cell animation X-Men kind of theme that, you know, I revisit because it's popular.
Yeah.
Why not? Right. You know, I loved X-Men from the 1990s. I have never seen that X-Men again that looked like that.
Yeah, everybody
Right?
loved that show for sure. Yeah, when I saw your content, like the one that really stuck out to me was Smurfette flipping off and like smoking or whatever. Like that was so like revelatory to see that, because like you would never see like that cartoon.
Or it'd be on a T-shirt.
Or
like,
yeah,
one of them
that
dirty
was just
T-shirts
like
that you
it
get
looked
sent home
so
wearing at
good.
school.
It looked so authentic, like that universe. I was just like, I really would like love to. I'd watch a live action whatever of Smurfette in that scenario, like being a caustic like Smurf, you know, like down on her luck, and just like well, that's so up my alley. It's incredible.
My comments on his post are always would watch.
Yeah.
You know, like every
Like,
time he's like, I would definitely
I get that a
watch
lot.
it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Would watch.
because of this great attention, I never expected the account to blow up the way that it did. So behind the scenes, my friend and I were I'm the only one behind this account, but I have like I said, Scarborough is a very interesting place. So I have a lot of creative people that I grew up with. So we're working on animating some of these. So creating a portfolio, which the account is, behind the scenes, where we are splicing these things together in like a Robot Chicken kind of scenario, where I will be pushing out like 15-second episodes of just randomness, because
Awesome.
I think that's what everyone's attention spans are. But I think
sure.
we've never seen a Robot Chicken after, right? And it
Yeah.
was using these images and
Mm-hmm.
likenesses and toys from our childhood and making them in absurd environments that the big companies would never put them in.
Right.
And then that's it. Then you move on to Smurfette,
Mm-hmm.
you know, flipping you off, and then you're going to
Yeah.
you know, Robin Williams getting drunk or something like that as
Yeah.
the genie. Like
Yeah.
it's just things that are funny, and then we move on because you know life is like that these days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really great. I love the content. I hadn't seen anything like it. And Josh was like, check this out. What do you think about this? And I was like, I don't have Instagram. I don't really surf. I'm on Twitter. I Reddit scroll a lot. I saw that you'd posted under Deja Vu and under some of like the Midjourney subreddits and
Yep.
stuff, talking about that. So, I don't really consume a ton of like the visual content. Really, I consume a lot of text content. I like reading on the internet more than kind of like taking in the visual stuff. And Josh is kind of the exact opposite.
Yeah, I'm a visual person. I like.
So he like sends me these links and he's like, hey, check this out. And I was like, oh, wow. I was like, this is really interesting content. He was like, well, I'm going to bring this guy on and talk about this stuff. And I was like,
I appreciate it.
yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun, man. And to hear you like give me the ideas for the Dungeons and Dragons, man. Like I'm literally going to go home tonight and download one of these programs and start playing around
Well,
with for scenarios. Like
I've
it's just going to
thought
make my
about-
life so much easier, dude. I love it.
I've thought about having us do one and let it kind of learn through all of our episodes, and then have it as kind of a character, so we can like ask them what they think
Have
about
it
certain
create
topics.
an episode for us.
or just
That'd
like
be hilarious.
We could
We
just
ought to
kind of
do
be like,
that.
"What do you think about this topic?" and give it a name, and then let it answer. And just most of the time it could be just off the wall stuff, which would be better.
I would love
as
to
it,
hear
as
that.
it learns.
That would be funny.
When I'm going back,
There's a podcast called Dudesy. Will Sasso from Mad TV runs
Okay,
it
yeah.
with I think his name is Chad. But their shtick, whether or not it's true or not, they say that AI is the producer of their podcast. So it scopes the internet for popular subjects and then generates questions based on that. Whether or not, you know, it's Wizard of
Sure.
Oz, so there's somebody behind the
Right,
curtain,
yeah.
but that's their
that's
shtick. But I
cool.
think you have something there for sure.
that's a cool idea too.
That is
yeah,
cool.
yeah, and going back to like Hollywood, I think with AI and taking voices, it might be cheaper and easier too for them to use it. Say they got to do like a re-edit or like a voice where they miss some
Voiceover,
lines.
yeah,
and the actor
post-production.
can't- Yeah, the actor can't be there. They're on another project. Instead
That's
of
what I
pushing the
was
project
thinking.
back and having them
Yeah.
come in, it's like, well, we can just use AI to put that and hit
Yeah.
these 3 lines that we need them to say. You know, so I think they're going to figure it out. I think they're like most of us, they're lazy. And they don't want to be put in a situation where
Well,
they
they
have to
don't
relearn
like having
shit,
their
you know?
status quo upset. And nobody likes that. They like the way things are. You know, change is change, and
Well, they're
it's
dealing with
intimidating.
DVDs being gone. DVDs was a huge because you would release the movie
Yeah.
and you get a big chunk of money, and then we release the DVD. That's a whole nother chunk of money, and that's gone
Right.
now. So
Yeah.
now they're trying to scavenge that together, and then AI comes into play, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?"
Yeah.
You know. And then their contracts with streaming services, they're not getting all the money they want for streaming services because most streaming services are like, "No, this is what we're going to pay you for it. Like we're not negotiating. If you want it on our service, this is what you pay because we have plenty of stuff and we have plenty of subscribers." You know, so yeah,
so crazy.
but I didn't even think about the quantum computing and all
That's
that.
got my mind blown. I'm still
yeah.
thinking about it. We live in the
That's got me
golden
messed
age of
up.
content right now, is what I call it. You know, like we've got social media content. You've got infinite number of streamers putting out their own content. You've got creators putting out content on their own social media. I mean, like that's what kids are watching nowadays. I've had this conversation with Josh now. Like
YouTube, man.
they don't watch TV anymore. You know, they watch their YouTube creators. They're watching Twitch creators, TikTok creators. You know, they watch these like individual small creators who are putting out this content. You know, they're not consuming, you know, cartoons, you know, televised Saturday morning cartoons like we were anymore. There's not really that huge kind of group think of nostalgia anymore. You know,
Right,
obviously
yeah.
there are for the big ones like, you know, Mr. Beast or whatever is like the big huge one that everybody follows or whatever. But I wonder in 20 years, you know, what kind of nostalgia they are going to have with such, you know, smaller communities. It seems like that people are really gravitating towards now, as opposed to the larger, you know, syndicated television shows of our youth, you know, like G.I. Joe and He-Man
Yeah, I mean,
or
we
Transformers.
lived in the best time though when it came when we had cartoons being created to sell toys because we had the best toys, you know, like
Yeah.
I go,
That's true. Yeah, and you're right. Like I work with kids, so I know that there isn't kind of that collective cult that we had, right? Where you didn't watch it last night. Well, good
Right,
luck.
yeah.
Like, did you tape it?
Yeah.
No, I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Or and having those toys and those commercials where the kids are like immersed in like a dirt pit and like all these cars
Yes.
are flying around. Like when my kids, like if we're actually flipped to TV and they're like, "What's this?" I'm like, "This is called a commercial."
Yeah.
Like, and
I
they
was just
don't
thinking
watch
that.
it. These are fruit snacks. This is sugar. You like that, right?
Yeah.
They didn't know that they could be, sold. They
Oh,
love
yeah.
it, right? But there's a lot of memories, or there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't be able to tackle because kids or maybe followers wouldn't even recognize it. Like I've always wanted to do like My Buddy,
Right.
Oh,
like
yeah.
a toy
Yeah.
growing up. But I'm like, I don't know if that'll translate well. So I did My Pet Monster, and that didn't seem to get track as well either. But then I can see the age demographics on my account, and I can see, oh, okay, people 30 and up liked it. People
Yeah.
30 and under didn't really seem to recognize it, and that's
Sure.
just they missed out on that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, we were, really the first kind of guinea pig marketing generation. You know, we did, in hindsight, you don't realize that, what was happening when you were watching those Saturday morning cartoons. But like you said, they had the cartoons that were selling the action figures. And then like during the commercial breaks, you'd have like your cereal commercials. You'd have like your water gun or video game commercials. And I remember as a young kid memorizing the jingles of the commercials. Like I loved the songs and would like sing the songs. I remember like the slip and slide songs and the super soccer songs, the intro songs to like, Chippendales Rescue Rangers.
I can still sing all of them.
You
man.
can still sing all
DuckTales.
of those,
I mean-
just like a Pavlovian response in my brain when I hear them. I'm instantly teleported back to like sitting cross-legged 2 feet away from my television just for like 4 hours every Saturday.
It was the beginning of real marketing.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
And they knew
Looking
that,
back, you don't realize, what was happening.
When
there.
it's wore off too, because we're still at our age, we're still buying Legos.
Oh,
we're
man.
we're still buying all these things, and
That's
like,
why they're coming back, man. I mean, everybody now has, we're adults, we have our own kids, and we're like, trying to pass on our nostalgia to them of what we love.
I show my kids a lot of the
You
old
know.
commercial. Like, look what was thrown in my face. Because we'll go to Pizza. We haven't had my kids that didn't grow up with cable, so we'll go to Pizza King, and the Pizza King we have has a TV, and you put a quarter in it, and it can play the TV. And I put it on the Nicktoons or whatever, and then my son's just wide eyed looking at these toy commercials and stuff, because he's into action figures. I'm like, I was like, I forgot that you guys have never seen this. Like this was 90% of my day. was just seeing this stuff,
It's so
and
great.
so I'll go back on YouTube and show them like a big long collaboration of all the G.I. Joe commercials and stuff, and like 15 minutes long. I'm like, check this out. Look at these toys, man. I was like,
the battleship, it's like the size of the coffee table
I was
or
like,
whatever.
I was never
that no
able to
one
get that
had.
one. Yeah, I couldn't get that one. I had that, and it's
Yeah.
it's nice fun. But yeah, they just don't have that anymore, and it's a different world. And I mean, you can, like we were saying earlier, you can be afraid of it, or you can just be like, all right, well, this is it. Like, so how do we navigate that?
You seem to have a very positive outlook on
Yeah,
it. I'm sure you
it's
do as
nice.
a teacher. I mean, you're teaching young
'Cause
kids.
I haven't heard much
wanna,
positivity.
see the good in the world. I'm sure I'm a very cynical person. I'm a single dude. I live by myself. I got a couple dogs. I'm just a jaded cynic of the world. But to hear you speak about the future and the kids and how touched in that they are on this stuff, and I'm glad that Canada, at least in your case, are proliferating and teaching art, because they're cutting that out of schools completely down here. We don't have like music or
That's a
art
shame.
programs in our public schools.
And I think
anymore.
we are in. COVID was tough.
Sure.
Obviously in the education system, a lot different in Canada than in the States, because I did have a chance to kind of drop down when we were allowed to. But I think this is the Renaissance. This is a new Renaissance where everybody has the capability to create and to share, right? So it's easy to kind of to hate on people, but everyone, if you're sharing and creating brand new cool stuff, then why hate on it? And there's so many avenues I haven't even explored yet. I know music is another thing that will be touched upon. Like I know there was like a Drake song that was done with AI, and I think there was a Kanye West song that was also done. It would be cool and if you don't like it, then you don't have to like it. But we didn't have this last year, right? And we didn't have it when we were growing up. And if I knew that I could create anything that I wanted, that would have been a genius, right? To us. So I think, we have all this new technology that floats up, and it's what we do with it. Mm-hmm. But, obviously there's things we need to be worried about. I could go down a rabbit hole on a lot of dark stuff, but, I think if culturally we accept it, we try to embrace it instead of trying to safeguard it and lock it behind closed doors. And and you mentioned fear mongering at the beginning of the episode. On the news, they do share that a lot, right? Like,
it's what sells.
OpenAI is afraid that, they've created like a sentient model.
Yeah.
Right? I think if everyone is transparent, let the world decide what we're going to do with this stuff, because there's always going to be a military component to it, right? Being able to make these decisions, these war games scenarios, which I'm sure has already been kind of decided for the last like 20 years. And we're just playing along with whatever scenario it is, but there's a lot of cool stuff that can keep us maybe distracted from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep it.
There's a new video game that just came out called Pal World.
Mm-hmm. Pal World.
Yeah, and a lot of it's ripped off of Pokemon and stuff. And there's this big controversy, and they're like, because the guy who's behind it all has come out and had a lot of positivity about AI. So now everybody's like, this game was made strictly on AI, and a lot of the gamers and the content guys who do the game, they're like, so what? It's fun.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like the number one game out.
Who cares how it was made? It's fun. And there's not a lot of fun games. So we're getting a fun game. Who cares if it's AI or if they did it? And the guys, because they're like, if it is AI, he's paying his guys really well. Like he's one of the highest paid small. I think it's Japanese studio, but they're really small. But he's paying like it's a small crew, but they're all making like $200,000 to make this game.
Right.
So even if they're doing AI, he's paying them really well to have like an easy job. What's wrong with that?
Sure.
And like you're saying, it's like let the world decide it. It's the number one selling game. It's second all time for the most streamed at one time.
Yeah, it's
behind.
Wow.
I think I forget which one was the main one, but it's beating out all these other games. But of course, people are going to try to find the negative, and and the negative isn't even that bad. It's not like
we live in a hater culture in the content world right now, and I mean that's the double-edged sword of the internet. Yes, it brings us all closer together. We're much more interconnected to be able
yin
to.
And the yang, always.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's
but,
yin and yang.
You got to take the good with the bad. Ultimately, people love to hate on the internet, and I mean that's just it's a sport.
It is. Yeah, it's easy, and I think
it's absolutely easy.
And I think with our brains get wired a certain way when you're constantly taking in negativity. Your brain is going to be wired into being negative.
Well, it's easy to fall into that online for sure. That toxic discourse. So that's typically why I don't engage. I've been on Reddit since like its inception in the early aughts, but I have posted maybe 5 times. I like to lurk. I like to consume the content, and just I don't really get into the discourse too much because I find like myself, like I said, I'm a jaded, cynical person. I'm very susceptible to that, so that's why I typically don't engage. More of a lurker, kind of in the shadows, consuming the content. But yeah, man, our conversation today has been insanely mind blowing for me. I cannot wait to implement some of these ideas in my D&D campaign and check out some more of your content. I'm so excited to see these shorts, dude. That's going to be incredible.
And speaking of
they're
that,
coming out. Yep.
Oh, I was just saying, and with like you're saying, you're moving forward to doing the shorts and stuff. So, are you afraid of like running out of like ideas, and like with like what you're, because I mean you've done so many different 80s and 90s cartoons and shows and things like that. Is that kind of a worry that sooner or later you're just gonna have to start recycling a lot of these same ideas, or do you have even further idea to move on to something totally different anyway?
Yeah, so that's a good question. This is just phase 1. So right now I'm just creating as much as I can, because from what I have been playing around in the background, my images translate very well to animating using After Effects or even using AI tools to animate. But I think, like some of the shorts that are coming out in the future, some of them will just be like a video of someone's like lips talking over top of an image to make it look kind of super cheesy, like almost leaning into the Thunderbirds kind of style.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, if we make a few of those. We'll see what the litmus test is. But my goal is, as always, is education and trying out new styles and experimenting. And it really is irrelevant whether or not a post gets likes. Sometimes I just have to exercise these things out of my brain. Like running out of content. Like I drive, my commute is long to get to my school, so it's usually listening to music will generate an idea and will bring me back. I'm listening to like songs I listened to in high school and like the late 90s.
Yeah,
that will put me in a different mindset. So I time travel back then. All of a sudden, that made me remember this and that, and then I have to ask my phone to record a note because I'll forget it.
Yeah.
I'll spend a couple days working on something and push it out and see what happens.
That's cool.
And talking a little more about the process. So with the AI, I've noticed with some of yours, you're doing kind of the head moving. It's kind of this smaller kind of motions that you're added to some. And sometimes with the AI that I've seen other people do it, the matching up of the mouth, sometimes when the head will move in the mouth, you'll see these kind of almost like glitches and stuff. Is that so with the process? I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question. I obviously don't know enough about to ask it, but the mouth kind of being off, is that the AI, or is that like the art like touch up kind of process? Like where I'm trying to understand, like, does the AI themselves doing the lips, or is that more of you guys as the artists kind of adding that and who's doing that?
That's a good question. So from what I've seen, there's kind of two methods of doing it. So there's one platform, I think it's called DID, that people are using, and you can type something or say something and it will animate a mouth onto your model, but the model I don't think is moving. So it can be very accurate in terms of like the lips moving, but you're not going to have it mapped when the head's moving. Right. There's another platform people are using called Runway, which is doing some incredible AI video stuff. Doesn't do a good job of carrying it over with the moves, right? So that's when, if I play around with an idea and it doesn't, like, as soon as it starts glitching, I can't, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't, it loses the magic for me.
Sure. Takes
I'll
you out of it.
Cut it at a certain point before it kind of, becomes dystopian and falls apart. So that's why my angle right now, until AI video catches up, is to slap on an actual video of someone speaking over their mouth and then kind of map it. So you still get the goal, but then you're not kind of being taken away from the illusion.
That's an interesting trade.
But it will get there, and I'm sure if you put a little more time into it, but I don't want to spending more time mapping things on there just for something that's short. But AI will catch up very, very quickly.
Yeah, it's been like,
it's fast.
2 years? What? 2 years since like consumer AI models, maybe?
I remember the first thing was the app where you could like bring old photos to life.
Yeah, when they were like showing like old people from like the full 40s,
and I was
like their wives.
Wow, that's wild. And then it seemed like a week later, it was everywhere. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, this moved real fast.
Yeah. And those first versions of like Chat GPT that came out, like I was blown away by what they were able to do. I was like, what?
Or even all those robots that they were making in China, where like the robot, and it was an AI, and they would feed it, and then they would have conversations with the robot, and some of the stuff they would say, you're just like, whoa.
And then dude,
some of it was like, that's pretty cool, but some of it's like, ooh, man, that's
terrifying.
Wild. Yeah,
it's terrifying.
It's just one of those things. Like I said, like. An educator like you in it, like I think the problem for me is I just don't understand it.
Yes, that's why I'm terrified.
Yeah, that's why I'm just like, I don't know, because I don't know. Like, so like I kind of stay, but I know a few people who use the Chat GPT in our in some Discords, and we'll kind of bring it on and ask it questions about stuff, and it's accurate, and then sometimes it's just some off the wall stuff where you're like, that's funny, but that makes no sense. Like, where did you get that from?
That makes me feel good, at least, because every time my brain goes to that dark place again, like I'm a total cynical person.
all
I'm thinking
fear.
of Skynet and Terminators, and then like all I'm thinking about then is like when you like ask it something and it spits out the dumbest thing you've ever heard, and then I start thinking about the Boston Dynamics commercials of those
the
robots where they're
dogs.
just like kicking them over or whatever, and I'm like,
Sure.
okay, I've got a few years until the Terminators come for
Yeah.
me. Then I think I'm okay. Right?
Yeah.
Not to scare you or anything, but if you were AI and you knew that people were scared of you, you'd play stupid a couple times, wouldn't you? I'm sure.
Oh
you know
my
people
God, yeah,
like
you're
that,
absolutely
that play
right,
a little
though.
coy too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's what
You're absolutely
they
right.
asked Neil deGrasse Tyson about it, and he was like, "Well, he's like, this is the thing. It would more than likely just come to the point where AI would look at us and be like, we don't need you. Like
Right.
you bring nothing. All you're doing is destroying stuff. Like you're doing nothing
They
to help
disregard
anything.
us as
Yeah, it would be
obsolete.
this thing where it would just the same as what we do as humans. We look
Right.
at certain things like that's
Useless.
there's no use to that.
Yeah, that's
I'll kill it
useless.
or get rid of it. And
Right.
it's kind of the same. And that's I think where a lot of that fear comes from. It's like
Sure.
we know deep down inside how we treat other states.
Yeah, we do not
You know,
want the tables
yeah,
turned
and then
upon
when
us.
something
Please do
there
not.
has the same kind of that is being taught from us,
Mm-hmm.
sooner or later it's going to look at us and be like, we're better than you. We don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's where the fear of the putting the chips in your brains and we becoming kind of the cyborg thing. But
Yeah.
it is nice
yeah.
to hear.
Like,
some
well, I know
positive
Elon
stuff.
Musk just put a chip in someone's brain
Yeah,
last week.
I
and to see how
know.
that goes, or it turns into the whole Matrix, right? Where we're in a vat and we think that we're happy, but the AI has always been there. And
Yeah.
it's running in the background. We're just pretending that we made it.
Yeah.
We're in a simulation.
Yeah,
Oh,
and that's the whole
no.
simulation thing. It's like there's that theory that we're in a simulation now.
Yeah.
So like
People
this
think
is all,
that, man.
so
People think that all the time.
Don't know. So
Man.
There's lots of news in the States I heard about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
AI and
Oh yeah.
They go
flying
crazy
things
down
around.
here.
Well, I mean, they've been talking about here. Like, there's this big fear where it's like, oh, they're gonna chip you. And I'm like, well, they already did. They got a cell phone.
You got a cell phone in your
Like,
pocket.
they're-
You're already
they've
chipped,
already
man.
chipped you.
That's the best one.
You
You're
agreed
addicted
to
Yeah,
it.
you love it.
You agreed to it, and you continue to get a brand new one every year.
They
so
got
it's
all
like,
your data
why are you
already.
worried about this? They already got you.
That's
Like,
what I'm saying, man. We people our age who are older and we've like grown up. I remember we're like the last generation to have technology basically our whole lives. I mean, I remember in elementary school having like the orange screen, with the floppy disk ROMs and doing
Yeah.
like C prompt, and then playing your Oregon Trail with on the green screen
On
with
the
the
floppy.
DOS, and then we had our NESs, and we've basically went through the progression of technology from its inception our whole life. So we're very comfortable with it, but we also remember it in its infancy and kind of the steps where it's came from. And, so for us, like every single thing we've ever done in our life has been digitally collated and recorded, and they've got everything they're ever going to need
Yeah,
on us, the government or marketers
know
or
everything.
whomever,
And, like,
for our generation, but they don't necessarily have it for these young kids now.
right.
But after this conversation today, like I know personally for me, I've had a lot of conversations with my friends about, how we live in the golden age of content, but you're seeing a lot of recycled content. There's tons of remakes. They're making, they're remaking Highlander. They're remaking,
Excited about that,
whatever. They're remaking all these older movies. They're going to make another Harry Potter. They're saying, they're going to, they have all these new Lord of the Rings
Lord of the
shows.
Rings, yeah. They're going to redo the whole story.
And I say we do live in the golden age of content because there's so many options out there, but you do see a lot of recycled content. And after this conversation today, where you're saying, in a few years after we're able to, fine tune these softwares and have machine learning come in, I wonder then, when you're able to just give prompts of whatever, I think we're really going to move into a true creator generation where all of these kids have all of these tools at their disposal. They're learning them in school growing up. And I feel like, we're not necessarily, these younger generation is going to be wired to be a 9-to-5er in a cubicle, being productive, running Excel and CRM softwares.
Be a lot of contractors
doing
working at
whatever.
home,
Yeah. I feel
traveling.
like people are going to be more creatively inspired, you know, because automation is going to kill a lot of jobs. Like, I think we all agree on that. It's going to kill a lot of jobs. So what are people going to do? You know, and I feel like after this conversation today with you, I feel like people are going to lean more into the creation of content, whether that'll be, you know, movies or music or art or whatever, you know?
Well, I think it just gives artists a chance to make money. For years, I mean, forever, like true artists weren't making money. Like they just couldn't. You'd have to set up on the street and sell an art.
Just like we
a
were
painting.
talking about Van Gogh, and he was poor as hell his whole life.
You spent 20 hours on this beautiful painting, but like you can, it's only worth what someone will give you for it.
Right.
You know? So it's like, and then you make $10, but it's like, I need $10. Like here's this painting,
Right.
you know?
That's
but now
crazy.
it's this point to where it's like an artist can like actually make a living. And I guess that's one of the positive things about it. I mean, we've talked about it with stand-up comedy, like YouTube and all social media has helped stand-up comedy massively.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Sure.
so I mean, I think it's just going to be a transition, like you're saying, with people and how they and who they become and how we do things. And
I'm hoping for just a massive cultural shift personally. You know, I wanted to see our culture, you know, our worldwide culture, you know, go, like you said, more the way of Star Trek than Star Wars. I'm ready for the more
that was
utopian
good. Yeah.
technological society where we're all, you know, very egalitarian and, you know, everybody's on the same level, you know, socialize the technology, get it out there for everybody to use. You know, I'm ready
Use it
for
to our
that. And that's
benefit.
like all I'm hoping for is like we can get away from this rat race and this wealth accumulation mindset, you know, to just you know, exploration and, you know, living our best lives, you know, have the technology do all the heavy lifting for us. Let them run the Excel sheets and, you know, run the stock market, automate all that. You know, we'll take all the rewards while we can make, you know, art and music and, you know, live our lives and rear our children. And
or just have the technology do all the stuff that's killing us. You know, like that's the thing is like get some of these jobs, I mean, will never go away, but like we can take the risk of human life out of mining and, you know, there's stuff
cobalt
like,
mining instead of
just
like
things
having
like
child slaves do it in Africa for us.
Well, now that you brought that up, so I read an article 2 weeks ago, and they said that AI had, that's what the article said, AI had found a new way to make a better lithium battery using new compounds that you could amalgamate together, which, you know, obviously, you know, it's there's child mining in Africa to get that out of there. So maybe AI, you know, we can embrace it. It can create these new fabrics or materials or power sources that will make maybe clean energy or,
Gosh,
you know,
I
will
hope so.
facilitate, you know, more equitable living solutions worldwide or with
Right.
medicine, right? But
Right.
then again, you know, not to be an alarmist, but there's going to be someone who wants to make money from that too.
For sure.
So
For sure.
as long as there's like a global push for this, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the big thing with using kids and stuff like that is all about cost. So if you're using AI, it's even cheaper,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So and it's even
Right.
so
You can pay a
so
computer even less than a person.
right? And a lot of times we as citizens aren't getting what we exactly want because, like you're saying, there's someone who wants to make money off of it. And so, like, all right, well, here's a way to where you can make your money and it's totally cheap, you know, to do. It's even cheaper. So, like, but then there's still going to be like, they're going to take it and be like, oh, it's even cheaper. We're still going to raise prices on this, or we're going to still, you know, like that means we can make even more profits. It's not that we can continue making the money we're making while helping the consumer and giving people what
There's
they
going to
want,
be a
you know?
tipping point in my estimation. I mean, there's only so far you can monetize everyone's daily lives and keep extracting wealth from them in every single thing and facet of their lives, monetizing their hobbies to where they're now jobs and gig economies and things like that. I mean, there's going to be a tipping point, you know. I mean, my hope is that these softwares and tools, you know, tip us in the right direction as opposed to in the wrong, you know. I mean, I hope that, but I mean, I don't know if it'll happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah, they don't become weaponized. It's more
That's what I'm
for
saying,
the global cause.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
'Cause there's been a lot of things that have been, I mean, Da Vinci created a lot of with his codex, you know, and it's like a lot of that was used to create aviation and things like that helped. It's
Engineering,
also
yeah.
used to weapons and like, you know, so it's like, it's all about, it's like, here's this, how are you going to use it? You know,
Yeah.
and you just hope that whoever gets their hands on it uses it in the best way possible. you
Here's
know?
to that, man. Putting out that good vibe out there. Don't use AI for evil. Skynet bad. Making art good.
So Joe, we really appreciate you coming on, man. This was awesome.
I had a lot of fun today, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, like
Me too. Thank you.
yeah, I have a different you on it. It was
I'm
I got
super
what
more
I was
informed.
looking for out of this. So like a little more
For sure.
positive and more understanding on it. And
Yeah.
but yeah, is there anything else besides Deja Vu TV on Instagram or anything else you want to talk about or tell people about?
Shameless plug, get in there.
I would just kind of thanks for watching and stay tuned. There's some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline, and once again, just thanks again for having me on. And please feel free to comment if you're looking for anything in particular. I'm happy to create things for you guys.
Hell
Awesome,
yeah, man.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, we
remember that.
might do that. See, I was thinking about for when we go to put the episode out. I always try to have a picture or something that kind of talks about episode tomorrow. So I don't know if there was something that we could send pictures of us and you could do like an AI working of
easy.
us or something. Okay, we'll
nice,
do that, man.
We'll
But
send you
yeah,
some photos or something.
this
man.
was really
good.
really good. We'll have you back on. And like I said, I'm big fans. I'll be following
sure.
you, and I'll keep commenting. We'll watch or totally would watch kind of
For
thing.
sure.
But
Yeah, man. I'm looking
That's
forward to
good.
seeing your new shorts and anything that you put out, man.
Yeah.
Thank you again for coming on. We appreciate it.
definitely support you. Thanks, man. So Jared,
All right, thank you so much.
Jared, go ahead and get the email and stuff real again for everybody before we get out of here.
So thanks again, everybody, for listening. If you want to reach out, let us know what you thought about Deja Vu TV or AI in general. You can hit us up on the Melon Party hotline, 317-520-3168, or shoot us an email at themelonpartypod@gmail.com. But be careful, we'll scrape your AI off of our email and send you an evil Christmas card.
yeah. Yeah, we're going evil with it, even though we were like, yeah, good. No, we tricked you.
card. Give us your data.
You can also find us on, speaking of, Facebook and Instagram under the Melon Party. But yeah, we appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate Joe coming in. This was great.
A lot of fun, man. We'll see you guys next time.
See you on the next one. Peace.
All right, bye-bye.